Hello, everyone, and welcome to TBR's webcast. You can Google it, Google Global Strategy. My name is Allison Crawford, Marketing Manager here at Technology Business Research. I will be your host for today's session. We did to present a view of Google's mobile strategy today and are looking forward to an interactive session. Before I hand this over to Ken, I'd like to review a few housekeeping items to help you get the most out of today's session. We will be recording today's session and posting it to the TBR YouTube channel if you'd like to watch the presentation again or pass along to your colleagues. Second, as I mentioned, this is an interactive session, so we encourage you to ask us any questions that arise during the webcast. I will be collecting your questions throughout the session and posing them to Ken at the end of the presentation. Third, we'll send out the slides to everyone registered for today's webcast within 24 hours of the conclusion of the presentation. Now, let me introduce Ken Hyers, Senior Analyst in the Telecom and Mobility Practice. Ken heads up TBR's mobility-focused research in the communications sector, focusing on service providers, mobile and emerging devices, mobile computing, mobile device chipsets, and machine-to-machine communications. He'll be walking you through some recent findings based on his research on Google.
Allison, and everyone, and good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Thank you for tuning in to today's webinar. Today, we'll talk about Google and how it's come to dominate the mobile landscape. Al, if you can go to the next slide, please, slide number 2. Google wants to dominate the mobile ecosystem, so in a much more comprehensive way than it already dominates some aspects of the internet, namely search. Google is across several market categories, including search and advertising, allowed it to spread its investment into new markets, from cloud to application to devices. Particularly in the mobile space, it has a profound effect on how consumers use phones and access data. Google shifted from simply being a search powerhouse to become a key player in the mobile space. Buoyed by advertising revenue, it continues to introduce new products and enter new markets. But each initiatives have a common aim, which is to develop new ways to aggregate information from a variety of sources, develop advertising based on how people are using that information. So today, to talk about Google's ambitions in the mobile space. Specifically, we'll talk about where Google is money now and in the future, Google strategy, and the future outlook for Google and impact on the mobile industry. So, hi, my name is Ken Hyers, and I'm an analyst at Technology Business Research in our mobility practice. With more than a decade of experience covering mobile operators, handset vendors, and platform providers, I've worked with and provided advice to many of the companies who are affected by, who are working with, and who are competing against Google. I personally believe that Google's influence on the mobile industry today is as profound as any other single company has ever been in this space. You can go to slide 3, please. What it wants to do. The mission statement says it wants to organize the world's information and make it accessible. Business is advertising placement. Its business is aggregating and sorting advertisements and put in front of eyeballs. A good job of that, with growth from advertising rapidly and contributing 97% of the company's overall revenue. Everything that Google does has to be viewed through the lens that it's trying to grow ad revenue. Slide 4, please. Google initiatives have been in the mobile space, and that's no surprise. With ad revenue growth slowing, Google has been looking for new areas to grow ad revenue, and found that in the mobile space via Android, its device operating system. Android is driving more search and therefore more ad-served volume. More targeted ads to be served to mobile users, and it's giving higher revenue per click, since most command higher prices, given that they're relevant. Part of a synergistic strategy by Google to drive search volumes and increase paid clicks, paired more more relevant information about searches. Google launched a mobile platform that not only enables search and the delivery of ads, but collects very targeted, aggregated information about users, which allows it to serve ads in a more targeted fashion. Volume is the greatest driver of paid click growth. Aggregated paid click growth rate decelerated in the 3 years prior to the introduction of the first Android phone. TR believes that the rapid sales of Android devices are the primary driver of increased query volumes, paid clicks, and sources of Google's revenue. And key to Google's ambitions is it can command higher per-unit pricing for mobile search since it provides more relevant advertising. And enables Google to extend its presence and its ability to monetize search beyond the PC. 5, please. Google's initiatives lately have been about the mobile space, but don't take my word for it. Google and former CEO Eric Schmidt says the same thing. She sees Google's mobile future hinging on 3 things: mobile brand, mobile commerce, and driving the price of Android smartphones downward. Google own or operate a mobile broadband network, though its participation in the 2008 700 megahertz auctions, where it bid for but did not win spectrum, did result in the FCC's adoption of open access rules to ensure that net operators would allow any device or application to connect to the internet or to connect to the networks. Most known as an internet search engine, helping users find information about, well, anything. In the process, it generates vast amounts of revenue from ad sales. Google is beginning to drive a lot of revenue from mobile. It is increasingly enhancing its mobile offerings through services such as local search, reviews, and recommendations, which are making more targeted advertising possible. Payments. Google put together a mobile wallet system that lets consumers use their mobile phones to make payments in real environments. The payment system is Google's attempt to let people use their mobile phones to store credit cards, gift cards, and other forms of payment. Use the devices to make payments in a retail environment. Simply put your phone on a sensor and make a payment. Google will open the door to new types of advertising revenues for Google. Smartphones are the end game for Google's Android initiative. While advanced Android devices with lots of bells and whistles, they have higher margins for OEMs, but Google, the goal is to get as many Android phones into consumers' hands as possible. Make that happen. Google see Android devices retail for less than $100, make smartphones a true mass market device, and lead consumers to access Google services in a mobile environment. Now, Google's purchase of Motorola Mobility is a part of its plans for mobile devices. And Google's clearly achieving great success in 2011 with the Android platform, which is its other mobile initiatives. We'll go into some of these areas that Google has identified as strategic initiatives in a bit more detail. We can turn to slide 6, please. Android is the linchpin for Google and mobile. Android out, essentially, an experiment. When Google Android back in 2005, they really have a strategy for the operating system. For years, Android was a sideline to Google's strategy of providing search on other platforms. Google realized that the opportunities that mobile search presented, it began to develop the Android platform and to operators. Now, Android is the best-selling smartphone platform worldwide. Google's increased focus on Android is demonstrated in the company's revenue and profit expansion in 2011 and beyond. Google Android became profitable. TBR believes that Android became profitable in 2010. Now here, we made that Android provides a very significant revenue stream to Google, and that revenue stream will continue on an upward trajectory for the foreseeable future. Here, we think deliver to Google more than $6 billion in revenue. So business is all about serving ads. Then it has to be viewed as a very effective delivery mechanism. Search advertising is the most valuable for Google, and draw search-based ads. Ads which are relevant to something someone is looking for are intrinsically more likely to draw both clicks and sell-through. And these are highly relevant ads since they're typically location-based, and consequently they're more valuable to advertisers. Drive growth in searches and opportunities for search-based advertising. This is especially true in emerging markets where PC penetration is lower than in the U.S. and in other developed markets. Interestingly, Google on other mobile platforms also drive revenue. From the Android platform, that Google will derive the most long-term revenue opportunities. And Google reach consumers wherever they are throughout the day, and this when they're in front of the PC. The next slide, slide 7. It doesn't build or operate mobile networks, but in fact, what it does, and it does do in a very real way, determine where, when, and how fast those networks are built out. More than any other single company is influencing the speed at which 4G networks are deployed, and its success in the mobile space will drive future network advances. Due to consumer demand for anytime, anywhere data access, mobile network operators are building out their 4G networks and add capacity by improving backhaul and planning to deploy small cells to fill in coverage gaps, particularly for in-building coverage. Google's is the most popular by sales volume of all major smartphone OS platforms today. And users make up the bulk of new smartphone users. They're driving explosive growth in data usage across mobile networks. And if the iPhone drove the more affluent and status-conscious mass market to adopt smartphones, Google's Android platform has democratized the smartphone, easier and cheaper to adopt. And the market has responded by rapidly adopting the platform over the last couple of years. So that adoption has been to drive demand for mobile data and mobile revenue for operators. Operators to accelerate LTE network buildouts in order to meet growing data traffic needs and a kind of network congestions that plagued AT&T with the iPhone early in its adoption of the iPhone. And in most where operators are not yet deploying next generation 4G networks, explosive demand for wireless data by Google's Android and other smartphones is driving operators to increase coverage capacity of their 3G networks. And this is the case in both developed and developing markets. This very real symbiosis emerging between Google and operators as Google's mobile activities drive consumer demand for mobile data and the build-out of carriers' mobile broadband networks, with Android phones drawing higher data revenue for the carriers. Let's go to 8, please. There's unsurprisingly embracing Android smartphones. Android drives data revenue. As more devices enter operator portfolios, there's room for other OS platforms on operators' shelves. They appreciate the fact that with the OEMs making Android devices, there's an Android device for every tier and price point in operators' portfolios. With devices available at a range of price tiers, the platform ideal for migrating customers from texting plans and occasional data use to full-fledged data plans, which are having higher ARPU. Operators prefer diversity, both by price and by platform, to market segments, creating an opening for other smartphone platforms. Operators are thrilled with the way that Android drives conversions from voice services to voice plus data, and they're focusing their revenues on driving sales and the data requirements of Android. It proved to be the most successful smartphone platform yet for operators as they seek to convert customers from standard voice plans to data plans. Success is critical to their businesses as they voice revenues stagnate or decline in coming years. Simply put, Android is an incredibly powerful driver for moving consumers to smartphones and data plans. The next slide, slide 9, please. This summer, Google followed out Google Wallet, its mobile payment system for smartphones. Google has especially equipped Android phones with near-field communication chips that let consumers pay for goods and services in the real world by snapping their phones onto specialized sensors at the point of sale. Wallet is important because it puts Google where the action is. Customers are paying for things, and with it, Google is using the loop. Most customers use an Android phone to search for a product. Google serves them an ad which takes them to the product, and they use Google Wallet to buy the product. Google's mobile payment system to leverage other assets such as Google Offers, and location-based services to deliver targeted ads based on customers' buying habits. Since all transactions pass through Google's payment system, Google gets a wealth of information about what consumers buy, be mined and used to deliver more effective advertising based on customers' buying habits and location information. Google collects more information about what people are buying and where they're buying it, and serve up more effective advertisements, which is advertisers more for. Even though Google doesn't collect direct revenue from payments made using the platform, it will generate revenue from targeted advertising, which leads directly to purchases using Google Wallet. Now, slide, please. So, to the Android phone platform, and always has been a mass market play. It's the Android OS available to OEMs for free. OEMs to develop smartphones based on the platform, and they've developed some pretty impressive high-end devices which are every bit as good as or better than the latest iPhones. And I know some people will disagree with me, so that's my own opinion. But I'm thrilled about this. I love the new Android smartphones because they drive more consumers to smartphone plans and drive more data revenue for the operators. But what it wants is more devices in consumers' hands. It's consumers in the U.S. or Europe, but everywhere in the world. Because phones are really, when you think about it, they're terrific data collection devices for Google. Buckets of information about where consumers are, what they're searching for, and what they're buying. And ultimately, they're superb ad delivery platforms. Google wants more of these devices in more people's hands, everywhere around the world. That means cheap phones. More people will buy and use, enable Google to collect more information and place more ads. Google's cheap smartphones as the quick way to get its products and services into the hands of consumers worldwide. And it's being aided in this goal by some OEMs. The platform lends itself to making inexpensive smartphones. And OEMs, particularly Chinese OEMs like Huawei and ZTE, as well as other smaller vendors in that market, making Android devices, like the ones pictured here on this slide. Their goal is of getting an average selling price down to as low as, in some cases, $40. That's the territory that low-end dumb phones occupied until recently. And Android smartphones are now affordable for people who until recently were paying much for a phone that could only be used for texting and voice calls. That's a big accomplishment. But keep in mind is Google's business isn't primarily to build a mobile platform that makes OEMs profits. Google's goal is to make a platform that provides it with more information about consumers and allows it to deliver more advertisements to those consumers. If we look at the scorecard for Google's initiatives, we see operators rolling out LTE networks across the U.S. and it's around the world. We saw this summer the initial out of Google Wallet, and we see both Android becoming the single popular smartphone platform and prices for those devices tumbling. So far, it's been a pretty good year for Google and its mobile initiatives. So let's go to slide 11. So, Google announced its purchase of Motorola Mobility. The main for this purchase is to bulk Google's mobile patent portfolio for Android. But I don't believe that the Motorola purchase will end patent litigation against OEMs making Android phones, though it will blunt the impact of some of those lawsuits. Thus, even if the Motorola purchase reduces some patent lawsuits targeting Android OEMs, those same OEMs are now concerned that Google is no longer a disinterested supplier of an open OS. It's now also a competitor. Google's assurances that Motorola Mobility will be run as a separate entity and will not receive preferential treatment. We think that OEMs will look to diversify their portfolios, and they look to Microsoft Windows Phone platform or their own proprietary platforms, such as Samsung has done with Bada. Google needs a small number of patents and to countersue when sued for patent infringement. Can you? I hope so.
Yep, we can hear you fine, Ken. Go ahead.
A relatively small number of patents, and its failure to countersue when sued for patent infringement. That suggests to us and Google's partners there are inherent risks in depending on Google's intellectual property or its to indemnify partners from lawsuits related to the Android OS. Google IP lawsuits aggressively and has provided legal resources to partners, but it does not indemnify partners. We believe that Google's lack of key IPR in the mobile space opens it and partners using the Android OS to a steady stream of patent infringement lawsuits and could ultimately slow Android's growth as OEMs are forced to deal with patent holders on a case-by-case basis. Purchase Motorola Mobility is likely to accelerate the decision by OEMs to look at their OS platforms. The main beneficiary likely to be Microsoft's Windows Phone platform. Go to the last slide. Android enjoys enormous momentum because iOS, repetition and touchscreen mobile operating systems have only recently emerged. The development cycle for smartphones delayed other entrants. One of the reasons for Android's success is that it has had virtually no competition from other platforms. Now, that came onto the market when other smartphone platforms were stagnating, and that essentially stomped those platforms into the ground. As Microsoft, Nokia, and Palm struggled to develop improved versions of their platforms and came onto the market, it essentially drove a stake through the heart of those older platforms. But it's succeeding in markets where Apple isn't. That is essentially an elitist platform. It's expensive, and it's made by only one OEM. Android devices, on the other hand, come in many flavors, many vendors, and at a range of price points. RIM, which until this year seemed relatively immune to the changing face of the smartphone market, is seeing major difficulties as workers turn to iOS and Android. At this point, the only contender that might have a chance at giving out significant new share is Microsoft Windows Phone platform. Nokia begins to introduce smartphones running on the platform, and other OEMs, way too much of their portfolio dominated by an OS that's open to everyone, turn some of their production over to the Microsoft platform. One of the factors that may drive the transition is Google's weak patent portfolio, which is Android OEMs up to infringement lawsuits from Apple, Microsoft, Oracle, and others. Android will continue to increase its market share, but that growth in share will not be uncontested. That is the end of my formal presentation, so if you want to go to the next slide, I will thank you for listening and open the floor to questions.
Great. And we've had a few questions come in so far, so we get started. First question we have was, what do you think the impact of the potential acquisition of Motorola Mobility will ultimately be on Google? Are you suggesting it could hurt Google as much as it might help?
I think that the acquisition of Motorola Mobility certainly brings into question for some of its of Google's Android OEM partners. Relationship long term is going to be between Google and those OEMs and Google and Motorola. Said that there's a Chinese firewall, essentially in effect separating developments on Android from developments on from what Motorola is doing. And Motorola Mobility will be treated just like the other OEMs, and that's kind of hard to accept in a way. I suspect that the OEMs are also thinking that might be hard to accept. We're going to a degree, take a wait-and-see attitude here. If we start seeing Motorola Mobility getting earlier access to new iterations of the Android, more quick other preferred OEMs such as Samsung and HTC, then that's going to that's certainly going to make it look like they're treating Motorola a little bit differently. If you are not Motorola, if you're another Android OEM, you're going to think that it's probably a good idea to develop, hedge your bets. You can do what Samsung's doing with Bada, or you turn to another OS platform. And as I said, I think Microsoft's Windows Phone platform is well positioned to pick up some of those OEMs.
Okay. Any other questions? Our next question is, what impact will Apple's strategy have on Google's success?
Well, I've said that Apple is more. It's a totally different model. Apple develops the phones. It develops the OS, and it exerts significant control over the apps that are available for its iOS devices. Now, in the past, there were only one or two devices that were available from Apple at any single time. But what now is a market where you can get several different iOS phones. You can get different flavors of the iPad. So more in the past, we do have a diversity of devices running the iOS, the Apple OS. So that makes it a little bit more competitive versus Android, since Apple does have different devices, different price points. But still, it is a very closed OS. It is one manufacturer, and by the way, it's incredibly profitable. I think that if we see Apple changing its strategy in relation to Android, it's mostly about getting more devices and more different flavored devices on the market.
Quite a few, actually, Ken, so get ready. Second question is, do you think there are some OEMs that aren't making money on Android phones? And if so, any view on who they are?
I think it would be easier to I'm sorry, I'm kind of laughing at this. I think it might be easier to say which OEMs are making a profit, or at least a significant profit on Android phones. And that is, at this point, Samsung and HTC. And as I said earlier, the model isn't really set up to make profit for the OEMs. Make their most profit on high-end devices. You look at what Apple's doing, they command a significant revenue for every phone sold. It's on the order of $400 or $500 for every new high-end, top-end phone sold. And for Android devices, in general, it's around $250 per every Android phone sold. At least that's what I'm hearing. So it's significantly less profitable. Now, it's a volume business, and if you have high volumes, then you can make some profit. But so HTC and Samsung seem to be the ones that have really cracked that nut.
Great. So our next question is, and it's a bit of a commentary followed up by a question. It's one thing to bring the cost of phones down below $100, making them more affordable. But the problem is the cost for data plans for these devices. Until the cost comes down, I think expansion will still be slow. For example, my whole family would like smartphones, but the data plan costs do not make it cost effective. What do you think about this?
I feel your pain. I've got a couple kids and an extended family, and everybody thinks that being a smartphone analyst that I should be able to help them out, and that's not the case. It's expensive. I think the operators are obviously in the position of trying to maximize their profits, and so they're trying to position smartphone data plans at a point where they can get the most people sign up while maximizing their profits. We are under a lot of pressure right now on data pricing and data plans right now. Obviously, you can go to Sprint and get unlimited on your smartphone. For LTE phones from Verizon, I think they've just doubled their the amount of data you can get with a plan. The U.S. in particular is a pretty competitive market, so we have a lot of different operators offering versions on data plans. That said, it's pretty darn difficult if you've got a large family to justify spending $40 or $50 per phone. I think that you will see some changes in plan pricing. Maybe you'll see more pricing come down, and perhaps you'll see data sharing plans, more data sharing plans between devices. All of that, though, right smartphones are just like the proverbial hotcake. The operators are having no problem selling just a lot of smartphones, and I think that they might not feel that great a pressure to drop their their data plans in the city. They've lowered the voice plans. Question?
And we're trying to get to your question, so just please bear with us. Lots of good stuff out here. Our next question is, what is your opinion about the future of RIM and BlackBerry compared to Android?
Well, I think that I don't think that RIM is doing as well as Android right now. That's the diplomatic answer. The big problem for RIM right now, and it's the problem that Symbian faced, that matter Palm, and even the older versions of Microsoft Mobile before Windows Phone came along. It's just that the RIM OS is a pretty old at this point. It's been out for over a decade. They are upgrading the OS, and their new QNX will be a lot more capable. In the meantime, though, there's this window opportunity, or rather, there's this period where smartphones are selling well, and RIM doesn't have a most up-to-date OS. It's going to be difficult for them over the next few months until they get the new devices with the new OS out, and it's just a difficult period for them. Great.
Our next question is an Android smartphone more vulnerable to security risks than an iOS smartphone, Android's various implementations?
Yeah, that is yes, but I don't think it's for the reason that you say. It's not so much due to the various implementations and all the variations in Android so much. I think the biggest threat to Android from viruses and malware comes from the lack of oversight by Google on Android market. Just about anybody can become a developer and put apps onto Android market. I think it is somewhere around $25, and you can upload your app. Now, obviously, Google, when it becomes aware of applications that are malicious or contain a virus or some problem, then move them. But it's after the fact. I think needs to be done. Google needs to take a more proactive role to applications that are brought onto the Android marketplace. Obviously, this is an area where somebody like Apple really shines, because a app doesn't get onto the the iOS and store until after it has been rigorously tested.
Two questions that came in that are very similar. So I'm going to ask the first one, and then the follow-up came from someone else. The first question was, can we talk a bit about Google's mobility services in the future?
What Google is looking for is to try and figure out more ways to collect information about, at least aggregate information about their users. I don't think they're a Facebook that is trying to collect specific information about individuals. What they want to collect is very detailed aggregate information about users that they can sell to or they can use for their ad auctions. Obviously, a mobile ad auction is more valuable than the AdWords for the internet or the PC-based internet. So what you're going to see is that Google is going to continue to introduce more services that are relevant to mobile user is. Where it is local search, where it is more view sites like Zagat's that attract more people to try and get information about a specific local information, and it's going to try and aggregate that information and use that for their sales. I mean, honestly, one of the interesting things is that in the past, a little bit, but one interesting things in the past is that Google has had a number of different initiatives by the employees that percolate upwards. What we're seeing now is Google is cutting back on a lot of their initiatives, so maybe we'll see less products and projects coming out of Google, but hopefully the ones that are coming out will be better out and will gel more quickly and bear results. And you follow up?
We do. This comes from another person. How will the competition between Google Wallet and Square play out?
I think it's just too early to say right now. Obviously, we're just waiting to see at this point, how well Google Wallet works. I think the big issue right now is just getting the devices out there. We all have ISIS out there on the market. So it's just getting more NFC-equipped devices. We're going to have to take a bit of a wait and see, particularly in 2012 as more of these devices come out, to see which consumers turn to, which they prefer.
Okay, so we have a question. Who is paying for mobile wallet tap capabilities to be put in at the point of sale?
That's something that we're looking into. Obviously, it doesn't require too much more in the way of expense to add that on, and it's essentially can just be a dongle, a pad, a puck that embeds or connects via cable to a point of sale register. I think various models in the past this has been an issue. Certainly, when you start running it out to thousands, tens of thousands of points of sale, it can become expensive very quickly. A bigger corporation that gets high traffic, McDonald's, for instance, they can bear it much more easily than a small mom and pop store that has to watch their things much more closely.
Another question is, how do you think Facebook's power for targeted advertising will affect Google's strategy moving forward?
I think that, and I kind of referred to Facebook a little bit before, they collect very targeted individual information, and that's very powerful. what we haven't seen yet is Facebook become a real force in the mobile space yet. Obviously, you can access Facebook from your phone and from your tablet as well as your PC. In fact, my children love to access Facebook from my smartphone, from my device. So that's possible. But I think that right now Google has the edge because they're collecting a lot more information from a lot more points of points of presence or devices, and they're going to really be able to monetize that much more effectively, at least in the near term, than Facebook. That said, Facebook also has millions and millions of customers, so they should be able to monetize as well. But I'm not seeing it at this point to be as well implemented in the mobile space.
Great. We're running up almost at the time, so we have one question we can ask. Any color on Google's enterprise strategy as part of their mobile strategy?
That's one of the things. We've seen uptake of Android smartphones in the enterprise. We're not seeing a whole lot of uptake of Android tablets in the enterprise. That really remains the domain of us primarily. Apple's got that underlying. We've got a lot of studies that are in the field or have been in the field that seem bearing that out. In the term, I think that Google Android has to develop a much more focused enterprise play. And going back to profitability of OEMs, I think that this is an opportunity if the OEMs can develop more enterprise-focused devices that focus on areas like productivity applications and first and foremost on security, and then ability to access key productivity applications, that would be a winner for an OEM and could really help them push their margins up. So, obviously, it would help if Google would partner and develop an enterprise grade and an enterprise flavor of Android. So far, they're not really giving any indication that they're going to do that, but that is obviously, I think, a really important direction that they should go. I saw you said that's the last question. On the last page here, you can see my email address and a phone number. Welcome giving me a call or shoot me an email. I'd love to answer more questions for you. A topic that's really interesting to me. And by the way, to all of you, thank you for taking the time to listen to this today. I appreciate it.
Ken, and as Ken mentioned, if anyone has any questions, I know we didn't get to everything today. If you have a question you'd like to follow up on, please feel free to reach out either to Ken or myself. You do have our email addresses. We have put up on the screen right now a few of the reports that we've been working on in terms of the mobile ecosystem, both from the provider side as well as the tablet side. If there's any interest in getting information about these reports, please do feel free to reach out to sales. Their information is listed on the bottom of the slide. Or you can call us at 603-929-166. Thank you, and hope you have a great day.